We'll talk a little bit of winners and losers of the draft here first. So, to be clear, let me preface this.
Yeah.
This doesn't mean that I think these are the 3 best drafts and the 3 worst drafts. I think these are just notable teams that we should probably discuss. I'll give you a hint. One right now, Pittsburgh, right? Hometown team. And, to be honest, we care more about them. Let's be real here. And like losers, like we talked a little bit about Detroit. We'll talk about some Cleveland. So we'll get into all that. Let's start, though, with the winners. Let's go Pittsburgh for one. I think they killed the draft. First of all, so here's our top 5 picks you'd see up on the screen here. We got Broderick Jones, Joey Porter, Keanu Benton, the defensive lineman from Wisconsin, Darnell Washington, big tight end from Georgia. So now I think we have 2 really solid tight ends with Freiermuth and Darnell Washington. Both can block and both can catch the ball. I think Muth's a little bit better at the whole receiving thing. But Darnell Washington's certainly capable. And then, of course, Nick Herbig, who is a really, really nice edge rusher. I think he'll fit in rotationally, right? So you'll have like Watt, Highsmith, Herbig. You could argue be your 3rd pass rusher in there in some packages. So I really like the pick up there. Like I said, we talked a little bit in the first segment. The Steelers are telling you what their direction is, right? Who are we building around? Kenny Pickett, George Pickens. Obviously, we've signed Minka and TJ Watt, right? Those are probably our 4 cornerstones right now. Like young, build around for the next 5 years, right? Obviously, like Cam Hayward, right? Definitely a cornerstone, but he's on his way out. He's probably got another year or 2 of really high-end play. So, he's a leader, not necessarily a cornerstone for the future, right? So that's our nucleus. What does that nucleus need? So for Kenny Pickett, you got to protect him. That's for one. And also with Najee Harris, you want to run the football.
Yeah, it's going to open up so much with Broderick Jones.
Absolutely. You want to run the football. On the flip side, right, so you have TJ Watt and Minka Fitzpatrick. So you have a guy at both of the really key levels. What you don't have, those a guy on the outside to lock somebody up. Then you go get Joey Porter too, right? We talked about how Cam Hayward is aging. How do you replace him? You go get a defensive lineman, Keanu Benton, with your 3rd pick. I think the Darnell Washington pick is... I don't think it adds a ton of value right now, but I do think there's something to be said for the 2 tight end systems, right? We saw back in New England back in the day before Aaron Hernandez decided to go start committing felonies and killing people. But we saw that with him and Gronk, right? So they were a dynamic 2 tight end group. We see it happen a lot. So I like the pickup there. And again, Herbig, who we signed his brother in free agency. So a little bit of family action there. You can't go wrong.
That's always the Steelers, too.
Yeah, absolutely. They get what? Hayward. We had the Watt brothers. So Edmonds for a little while, the Edmonds brothers. So I really, really like the picks there for the Steelers.
So do I. I think it solves a lot of problems.
I agree. Let's go to the other side of the state here. Let's go with the Philadelphia Eagles. First of all,
another big winner for sure.
Yeah, out of their top 5 picks, they go get 3 Georgia guys. They get Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, and then Keely Ringo there at 5. Tyler Steen and Sidney Brown sandwiched in between there. Jalen Carter. First of all, I think he's the most talented player in the draft outside of Bryce Young. I do think Bryce Young, because it's a more valuable position, and I do think he's a beautiful thrower of the football, is a more talented player that can make more of an impact now. But Jalen Carter is a close second. Reminds me a lot of like a J.J. Watt coming out. Like big, really quick.
Yeah.
Really quick. Not quite as like stout as an Aaron Donald. A little bit taller, a little bit thinner, but quick. He's a guy that can give you 12 sacks from the interior defensive line, which is a really, really impressive number for that position. Nolan Smith reminds me a lot of a TJ Watt. Speed on the edge. He's going to bend the corner. Could be susceptible against bigger, stronger tackles because he's not a bigger, stronger athlete like a Myles Garrett off the edge.
But he can outmaneuver the hell out of him.
Right. So the speed is where he's going to get you there. Steen's a center, I believe, maybe a guard. So getting depth there. Jason Kelce, we know, is probably going to retire after either this year or next. So that makes a ton of sense. Get depth there, develop him. I want to say Sidney Brown's at DB maybe. I don't really care for that pick. It's a fine pick. I'm very indifferent about that pick. Love the Keely Ringo.
Yeah.
I think he could have been as high as a late first, second round pick. He falls a little bit, so great value there. The Eagles drafting what they need, staying true to their board, not overreaching, right? You only move up one spot for Carter, so staying true to your plan, not reaching. I love the draft for the Eagles.
And somehow they dominated that much without taking any reaches. And then they go outside of the draft and make some great free agent signings.
Yeah, D Swizzle, they go trade for DeAndre Swift.
DeAndre Swift was a huge pickup. Now they actually have a very functional backfield. I feel like at times you kind of got into a little bit of like a like a stalemate. You just kind of
Yeah.
things plateaued there.
Yeah,
for
and it was
bit.
a lot. It was very Jalen Hurts dependent.
Yes, and now you add a guy like DeAndre Swift, who's just gonna run all over people.
Yeah, especially when you're paying Hurts that type of money, you don't want him to have to run the ball a ton. So that makes sense. Let's go with the Seattle Seahawks, the third and final winner here. I do think Christian Gonzalez was the better pick, but I do like Devin Witherspoon as well. So it makes a little bit of sense, right? So for what they need, they have Tariq Woolen, who is a longer, lankier DB, which is more what Gonzalez is. Witherspoon's a little bit more physical, a little bit more like in your face, can guard a little bit of the more physical receivers as opposed to the taller receivers, right? Like that you would want from a lankier DB. So in their system, it fits for what they already have. Jackson Smith and Jigba rounds out what might be the best receiving core in the NFC. DK Metcalf on the edge, Tyler Lockett on the edge, and then Jackson Smith and Jigba in the slot is going to be great.
Dudes. They got dudes.
Derek Hall, I thought was a first-round pick, falls to the second. He's a nice edge rusher out of Auburn. Auburn, love that pick. Charbonnet, the running back, not great for fantasy owners of Kenneth Walker. Obviously, nobody's drafted yet, but going forward, Kenneth Walker might dip a little bit in fantasy ratings, but I don't care. That's a really, really good two-headed monster in the backfield. And then Anthony Bradford, I want to say he was like a center or something like that. Whatever, good depth there.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Let's switch over to the losers, though. I'll start with who I think is the least of the losers here.
Okay.
Again, this is not the three worst drafts, just notable teams. So let's start with the least loser of the three. The Detroit Lions. I hated their first two picks. I don't like Jahmyr Gibbs and Jack Campbell at the slots they drafted him at. But Sam Laporta, Brian Branch, Hendon Hooker for your next three picks. I like Laporta as the tight end out of Iowa, I believe, and we know Iowa's a tight end factory. Brian Branch, who a lot of people had a first-round grade on, safety out of Alabama, really nice pickup. And I thought Hendon Hooker was the third or fourth best quarterback in the draft. I thought he was better than Richardson. So I like that pickup as well. So again, the value early on I thought could have been better. I thought they could have. This was a B- draft, but it very easily, if they would have just went for good value in the first two picks, it could have been an A+ draft. That's why for me it's a loser, because it was right there. It was they had it all there, and they in total Detroit Lion fashion blew the first round. Blew it.
Yeah, and well, at least it's kind of like a mini hit here too, because we were predicting a quarterback to the Detroit Lions there.
Yeah.
Because obviously Goff isn't going to be your guy for the future. You're going to draft somebody. He's going to sit behind him. Maybe you learn for a year or two, and then you insert them. I just didn't think Hendon Hooker was going to be that guy, because Will Levis was available when they were picking still.
Yeah.
So I was thinking if Detroit gets their hands on him, I am coming on the show and taking my victory lap, because I called that. But obviously they went a different route. They went the Kentucky rival with Hendon Hooker from Tennessee.
Valid. All right, let's go with the Browns next. So Cedric Tillman, the wide receiver. I'm not even going to pronounce that second name. It's like Sakayika, whatever. DeJuan Jones, the tackle out of Ohio State. I think it's a really, really underwhelming prospect. I think he's too big. Does not move very well for his size. Projects for me more of a backup. Isaiah McGuire is okay. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, a quarterback. If you weren't paying a fully guaranteed contract to Deshaun, I would get taking a flyer on a late-round quarterback, because if Deshaun ends up not being able to return to form that we think he was before the suspension and all that, then you have a cheap quarterback. You can move off Deshaun. The cap hits fine. You're good. But you're fully guaranteed his contract. So you can't move off him for the next 4 years.
No, you kind of stuck yourself now too.
So it doesn't matter if DTR is good or not. It does not matter at all.
You wasted a pick.
You just basically just drafted a backup for the next 3 or 4 years.
You wasted a
You
pick.
can go get a backup. Brandon Allen's on the market. Case Keenum, AJ McCarron's still in the XFL. You can go find a backup. It doesn't make a ton of sense to me.
Ben DiNucci's playing his ass off in the XFL, and I think I'd rather have him.
Yeah. And I don't even mind DTR. It doesn't make a ton of sense. And then the Washington Commanders. Are you really, here's the picks on the board, you're really going to roll the dice on Sam Howell and Jacoby Brissett when Will Levis was available when you picked?
Yeah, that's...
Hendon Hooker was available when you picked. Decent quarterbacks that are better than the two you have were available when you selected.
Them passing on Levis was interesting to me.
And then they took a lanky, wiry thin DB with their first pick in Emmanuel Forbes. Who is your number one team that you have to beat in your division?
The Eagles.
The Philadelphia Eagles. Who is your number one DB going to be matched up against? A.J. Brown. Emmanuel Forbes is going to get bodied at bare minimum twice a year against the best team in your division.
Yeah.
Every year.
Yeah.
Every year.
That game that you have to win.
Doesn't make a ton of sense. The only pick that I really like out of these first five here is KJ Henry. I thought they got decent value at their fifth pick there with their fifth rounder. He's a pretty big D lineman. Needs some refinement, but I think he's a big, strong athlete. Projects decently well in about a year or two if he can develop. Rivera's a decent defensive head coach, but it doesn't make a ton of sense. A team that you clearly need a quarterback, you need offense, and you just go hard into defense and line play, and it's just like, what are we doing?
Well, also, like,
Just beating around the bush.
even outside of A.J. Brown, like, the Cowboys have good weapons.
CeeDee Lamb's a good one. And look, now CeeDee's not the big physical receiver that that A.J. Brown is, but CeeDee can go make up some 50-50 balls. So
Either way. It's going to be some tough sledding in Washington, I feel like.
I'm not a fan of their draft. So let's recap here. The winners, we got Pittsburgh, Philly, and Seattle. The losers, Detroit, Cleveland, and Washington. Again, to clarify, not the 3 best drafts, not the 3 worst drafts, just 3 notable ones that we wanted to talk about. Kind of talk about what we liked, what we didn't like about those drafts. But it's just